powers. We are restricted by the City of Ferndale zoning ordinance and by Michigan law. The BZA is authorized to interpret the zoning ordinance and the zoning map, to hear and decide appeals made by administrative officials and bodies charged with enforcing the ordinance, and to analyze variance requests as permitted under the ordinance. The BZA does not have the power or the authority to amend the zoning ordinance or disregard its provisions or rezone parcels of land. The BZA changes in the ordinance must originate with City Council, not with the Board of Zoning Appeals. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mikulski?
Here.
Webb?
Here.
Palmer?
Here.
Azar?
Here.
Lazinski?
Here.
Chair Williamson?
Here. And I see Board Member Monk is absent today. I would entertain a motion to excuse Board Member Monk's absence if anyone is inclined to so move.
So moved.
Moved by Palmer,
Second.
second by Azar. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And next on the agenda, we have approval of the agenda. Do any board members have any additions to the agenda for tonight or any other issues to take up with our proposed agenda? Seeing none, I'd go ahead.
I'd like to approve the agenda for tonight.
Motion by Palmer,
Support.
support by Azar. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. The agenda is approved. Next up, we have approval of the minutes from our July 18, 2023 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? And does anyone have any proposed alterations, additions, deletions? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll approve the minutes from July 18th.
Moved by Board Member Palmer,
Second.
second by Azar. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. The minutes from the July 18, 2023 BZA meeting are approved. And next on our agenda, we have a call to audience. If there's anyone in the audience who has anything you would like to address the BZA about, other than an item that's already on the agenda for tonight, now's your opportunity. You can feel free to step up, introduce yourselves, let us know what you have to say. If you are here to speak to an item on the agenda, we will have another call to audience when we're discussing that agenda item. So you all still have an opportunity to give us your thoughts. All right, seeing none, we'll move past the call to audience and we'll move to our regular agenda. First thing we have on our agenda, and the only thing on our agenda for this evening, is a dimensional variance request for 637 and 651 Livernois, two adjoining parcels that are proposed for a new development. The applicant proposes a 16.69% variance in primary frontage building width, down from approximately 127.8 feet to about 121.4 feet, or down from 80% as required by the ordinance to about 63.3%. This requirement is set forth in section 24-83 of the zoning ordinance that applies to our mixed-use districts. There are currently 3 curb cuts on these 2 parcels. The applicant is proposing reducing this down to 2 curb cuts with the proposed new development. The applicant would like to maintain 2 one-way drives at a width of roughly 28 feet each on each side of the proposed building. And for that, the applicant is requesting a variance. Staff, do you have anything to add to tonight's item?
You did a great job summing it up, so I don't have anything else to add at this moment. We do have some members of the applicant's team here. We have the architect, Michael Gordon, and then we have Hassan and Joel Allen. Okay, thanks. So I will be here to answer any questions. I know a lot of you probably haven't met me before, but just to introduce myself, my name is Christine Ross. I'm one of the planners here. So I will let Michael take it away.
Christine, have you been to the BZA meetings before? I can't even recall.
I went to one on my second day working here in September 2021, so it's been a long time.
So it's been a minute. All right, welcome. Good to see you back here.
Thanks.
Thank you. And now for the applicant, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and let us know anything else you think we should know about your proposal, we'd like to hear it.
Michael Gordon, the architect, as she mentioned, the owners are over here. They've been owners of this property for, how long, 1975. Recently, they redeveloped the property on Orchard and moved their headquarters there. So So they're a strong Ferndale person, and I used to live here for 30 years. Real familiar with the area. We were approached to redevelop this property. As a matter of fact, we're also, across the street, there's a rehab that's under construction right now that we also did. So we're real familiar with the corridor and with what I think the goals are of the area. When we first looked at this property, based on the ordinance, one of the options was to place the 80% building tight to one of the property lines, which would allow a two-way drive into the site. Looking at it further, we said, well, this creates a complete dead-end street behind the building, from public safety, from fire, and from access to the building for move in, move out. We felt that this was a challenge, and it also forced one side of the building to be a completely blank wall because it's too close to the property line to have windows.
Could you hold that on a little more of an angle so our members of the public can also see? Thank you, I appreciate it.
Then the second option we looked at was, let's do two one-way drives. Nice thing, and then to code, we were allowed about 16 feet on either side, which is the ordinance. It becomes a quite narrow space, large vehicles, again, challenge. Plus, because of parking, we are limited to the number of stretch the building out to that full width, created large footprint units, even if we narrowed the building up with no gain to that. And looking at the market study, we came up with a number of what was a good sweet spot for the size of the unit. So to create this building. And if you're familiar with the way the parking along this corridor has been constructed, we have the layers of sidewalk as bicycle parking, and then you have. So there's a lot of line of sight issues. Have a two-way street going in and out. Have the driver more focused on the car that's coming at them, opposed to the bicycle that are coming. The bicycle, the pedestrian, if you're walking along here and it's a two-way, coming to a one-way, you only have to be cognizant of cars coming in one direction. We felt that this was a real nice zone for everyone. As part of what drove this footprint of a building, there's a wider area, fire trucks, emergency vehicles. We also have to have circulation through the sidewalk. This is actually only a 20-foot drive. This allowed us to get perimeter right through the whole building and really make a circulation through the site that is very. Back to my note to see if I.
Sure.
Oh, sure. To further demonstrate this, we decided to show some vehicles on and around the site that show the size of the vehicles. You get two trucks, you get Amazon Prime delivering all the time, and vehicles here. I think it was important. Only open driveways to really help this situation. Pedestrian and vehicular interaction, with the wide open space, you really can't. You also have people exiting cars here. There's a lot of activity. But also you want to minimize. Yeah, so when you got to the two one-way drives, it felt like that created a level of safety that enhanced it instead of having either one or two-way drives. The other thing too, this is a 160-foot lot. If this was a triple lot, we could have the wider driveways would be allowed. If this was only a single lot, we couldn't develop it to the ordinance because the 80% would only leave us 12 feet if it was a single lot. So if it was a corner lot, we could also develop it because we could go to a side street. So because this is an interior lot, and it's only 160 feet-ish wide, we're looking at some different challenges of how to get the circulation. Plus, we also did the driveway study of all the driveways on the street and how we would interface. And the reason we chose the north one as the way in is because of the interface with other driveways. We felt it was the better choice for this. And the other thing too is green space. If we stretch the building across, there is no green space on either side of the building. It's all pavement, and I know we're all very cognizant of trying to keep these areas green and get some vegetation, water management on the site, etc. We've also taken the initiative. One of the things I was asked to look for ways for energy conservation, including a study to see if solar panels on the roof make sense. So we're really trying to be that people and create a product that everyone can point to and be proud of. So if you have any questions or if you want to add anything.
I have a couple of quick questions for clarification, then I'm going to open up the public hearing and we'll get comments from audience members because that may also lead to additional questions. First, I want to clarify what you are proposing doing on this site overall is building a building that is somewhat smaller than what you are both permitted to build and from what the ordinance would require you to build across the frontage of the space, correct?
That is correct.
And you're not looking for any other variances other than the variance that would allow you to have a narrower frontage than would otherwise be required.
Right. Everything else is to code. Code. We've tried to be real cognizant. Prices continue to rise. Product that we felt delivered. And, everything else, live work units on the first floor, percentage of glass, very generous. Like a product that we're looking to use. Like at this conclusion. Especially since we have.
Is there any alley access to this parcel?
There is no alley.
So the only access is just from Livernois, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay, if you just want to state your name.
My name's Alan Jawad. And
Great, thank you.
I own the properties at 637 and 651. I've been there 21 years. I was going there as a kid. My dad worked for Fred Lax, and Fred Lax owned the business as well. And Mike did a really good job of explaining, what it is we're trying to do there. My goal is to share my experience having worked there for 21 years and pulling out of that driveway for 21 years onto the street. With it being changed now and there being a bike lane, there's no longer a left-hand turn lane on Livernois. One direction north, one direction south, the bike lane, and then the parallel parking. So our goal, as Mike said, was to create a safe entry and exit to the building. And then out to the street as well. How long did you say the fire truck was? 53 feet? Yeah, so having access from the street, UPS deliveries, Amazon deliveries, all those things we've experienced having been there as long as we did, as we've been. I'm just looking here, the parallel parking, no left-hand turn lane. I'm just going through my chicken scratch notes here. Oh, that's right. So the area, as I said, I've been there 21 years. We've had numerous power outages over the years in that area. And getting to your question with the easement, there is no access. I was asked numerous times by DTE to access through my yard, both at 637, at 651, to get to that easement. There's a lot of trees in that easement, and accessing from the residential side is difficult to do. So they would access through my yards during that time. I think having that circulability, is going to, again, create a safer situation and allow utilities to service the area when power does go out. That's really all that I have. I don't have, Mike told you we moved to 950 Orchard. I don't know if you guys have seen the work there. It was the old Mountain Spring water building. We did a pretty heavy-duty renovation to that. Mike did the drawings for that as well. We moved our business on 8 Mile, which was Excel Restoration. We have a culinary mushroom James Beard Award winner there called Stony Creek Mushrooms, who's now a tenant there. So they are now in the Ferndale market as well. And I don't have any other comments. If anybody has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm sure we will. I'm going to open the public hearing and let
Okay.
members of the public give their comments and thoughts, and I'm sure board members and myself will have further questions
Very
afterwards.
good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this point, we'll open the public hearing at 7:20 p.m. Members of the public, if you'd have any comments, any questions, if you want to step up, introduce yourselves, let us know what they are. If you have any questions for the applicant, you can direct them to the board, and then we'll, anything that you have a concern or a question about, we'll speak to the applicant about and get answers to those questions. That said, you're also not required to. It's up to you.
Do I need to go up there, or can I just talk from here?
No, you need to go there because this is being recorded, and the microphone is up there. And then that way we can actually catch the questions and catch your name and everything else.
My name is Jim Bear. I own the building right across the street, the 624 Livernois.
Sure.
So I would just, I guess, is this just strictly all residential, or is it like residential above and then businesses underneath, or what does it all entail?
Based on the, we'll clarify with the applicant, but based on the drawings and the application, it looks more like a live-work space where people would maintain an office, maybe in their living space, as opposed to an actual business where it would be a commercial space. They're not commercial spaces.
Oh, okay. Is the house, is this gonna include the house that, I think you bought the house next door, so that plus the property that you guys are on now, that's gonna be that whole strip there?
It will be all of 637 and 651.
Oh, okay. All right, and what is it you're trying to get variance for, to move closer to the street? No.
Sir, we have to maintain the questioning in a way that where the microphones are picking everything up, and anyone who's listening or watching to this later can hear everything that's going on. That's why we tell you, direct your questions and comments to us up at the board. We'll take notes on everything that you're concerned about, and then when we get the applicant back up to the microphone, we'll have the applicant answer every one of the questions and concerns that you have.
So the question again was, is the variance that you were looking for to move closer bring it forward to the street?
Right, and I can answer that for you. This is, the variance is from a relatively new portion of the zoning ordinance that says in a mixed-use district, the width of the building has to be at least 80% of the frontage of the property. It's basically a provision that was added to the zoning ordinance in areas that were more commercially heavy areas so that there weren't significant gaps between the buildings and you could have more of a continuous storefront experience and pedestrian experience along the street level. And what he's looking for is he wants to slightly reduce that 80% so that the building isn't quite as wide as it has to be.
And that's the reason, and then I'm thinking is so that he can get those two driveways in to give the space that he needs.
Right, and that's what the applicant has come to us to say, I need to reduce my space because I have a specific design that I think is safer and makes more sense, and I can't do it unless I get the variance.
Okay.
Right.
I understand. Thank you.
Anything else that you'd like us to clarify for you? All right, thanks for coming, Mr. Barry, appreciate that. Any other public comment at this time?
I did have a letter, an email that was submitted to the Community and Economic Development Department.
Great.
So I will read that into the record. This is from Cynthia Silvery. So it says, "Dear Christine, we are writing this letter in support of the Zoning Board of Appeals dimensional variance application for the property at 651 Livernois. We are owners of the 650 and 660 Livernois properties directly across the street and have had our architecture and landscape architecture practice located there since 1999. We have reviewed the application materials and find the proposed primary frontage variance reasonable given the configuration of the parcel. Furthermore, we find the project well-designed and very much in keeping with the intent of our zoning ordinance. We look forward to the finished project and believe it will be an amenity to our business and residential community."
Thank you, Christine. All right, with no other members of the public here to speak, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:24. But for our members that are here, if you do have additional questions later on, feel free to just let us know, and we'll reopen the public hearing and let you ask anything else that you have to ask. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn this over to the board members. So if board members have any questions, any comments, anything that they would like to raise with the applicants or with staff, I'll let the board members do that now.
The chair, so it's going to be two 20-foot driveways? And at the back, how many parking spaces are at the back?
I would require it, and
I was trying to count them and it was hard.
sorry, because my third project today, so I got to. 23. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, 22. So it's more than one per unit.
Right. Well, and we wanted to have a few guests. Well, actually, the first 4 units are required to have 1.5 because of the live work.
Right. So it wouldn't be 1.5 if there's 18.
Well, no, but the 6 only require the 1.5. The 12 upper units don't. They only require 1.
I see. So if they have guests, where do they park?
Well, there's the on-street parking, and the one thing that we're learning over time, of course, is the number of vehicles that people own. We have other people that we work with in the multifamily. I've got a 5-unit building right now. There's 1 car. So it's a trend, and a lot of communities, like even Royal Oak, has reduced the requirement for parking downwards because the trend that we are seeing, particularly in this segment of the market. With a walkable, livable, drivable, bikeable community, you see more of that. And it does meet your ordinance.
Through the chair, to follow up on that, what I'm understanding is the building size fits the parking available as well. So a larger building would probably put you at a shortage of parking. So this seems like a right fit for the building?
Right, that was one of our talking points, was that to make it broader across the front, you'd have to reconfigure the units, and this is either make the units larger, or some of the units larger, or to configure the units in such a way that the layout was becoming challenging. This is a nice, we call it kind of a shotgun unit, bedroom, and there's a certain, the wider the unit gets, the greater the span, the greater the cost of the joists and everything. So we're trying to really hit that sweet spot so we can keep that rent below us. Well, plus, again, it also, like I said, we get landscaping on 4 sides of the building. There's little parklet areas for the tenants. Plenty of bike parking.
Through the chair, Christine, would this come for a site plan review? Okay. All right.
Yeah, it would.
Thank you. I'm the liaison from the Planning Commission, so I can see a lot of questions that would come up. But also I wanted to draw kind of a parallel to a recent project, recent 2019. We had a project with townhomes, and they came in with kind of the same situation. Ian, I think you were there on McDowell. So they came in with a single two-way drive, it dead-ended, and through review, I think the preference and discussion was to go to two one-way drives. And I think it does make the site more usable, given the constraints and trying to keep the site accessible for, not having a dead end. So I'll leave it at that. And just sort of an aside, not to do with the waiver that's requested, is that I just informationally, I think the planning commission would be looking for less wide drives. I think that when you put a wider drive in, it's likely that cars might want to go side by side if they can, so one can pull left, one can pull right, and the concern is always crossing that pedestrian/bike. So I think in concept, the one-way, as long as it's signed and people follow that, is probably a strong design aspect of making this successful. But there's things that I, would recommend for planning commission to see.
Less pavement, more landscape.
Less pavement, I could go down the list. Yeah.
Through the chair, I also had some, concerns and questions related to the widths of the drive. So I guess three questions to kind of understand the drive's width, because I'm also with you on a lot of the site plan right up until 20-foot wide one-way drives. In some communities, 20 feet would be a two-way drive. So I'm struggling to see these as one-way drives since they are so wide. So I was curious if you did do a two-way drive, because you had showed the design and said you considered that. So the design that you held up with the two-way drives, what was the width of the...
To meet the code from the original, if we went with the 80% frontage, we could only get one two-way drive in, and then the building would be pushed over, so that winds up being a dead end. Now, we'd be happy to work with the engineering department, with our civil engineers, if we can reduce the width of the drive. I'm all for that. It was just with the turning radius around the buildings and the larger vehicles like fire trucks, ambulance, cube trucks, people moving in and out, we sort of came up with our engineer. But if we can reduce that, we will certainly take that under consideration and come back and, because.
Okay, because that's pretty much my line of questioning. Was I was just curious, like, if you did a two-way, what would be the width of that?
Your code requirement is for a 24-foot wide.
24 for two-way, so it's only 4 feet wider than the one-way you're proposing. And then the other question I had was when you showed, and you initially showed, I think you said, two 16-foot one-way drives. Would that have required a variance?
No, it's a 12-foot drive and a 4-foot sidewalk, and that's actually code permissible.
Yes.
But we were concerned that that's just, and again, there's no landscaping down the side. If you're walking to your back unit and you're just walking down a driveway and a sidewalk, it just seems restrictive. Plus, some of the turning radiuses, and how big trucks are. Robertson Brothers has a complex near my office. A semi was going through the townhouse units. They have islands now down Delamere. Couldn't make the turn. Truck got hung up on the island and wound up having to back through the development out the other way. Held up traffic because someone, the engineer, they didn't ever take into account that a semi would be coming through this townhouse development.
Okay.
So it's just, we want to have a nice balancing act between what's required and what's practical.
Okay. I was just curious, so with the 16-foot requirement, would you still have to get a variance if you just went with code?
No, we wouldn't, but to achieve the 80-foot frontage then drives the design of the building into a much more expensive structure because we can only get so many units based on parking. So to add all that width to the building, maybe shortening the depth, but we just couldn't come up with a configuration of a unit that was efficient to build and certain rooms, bedrooms have to be a certain size.
I think I understand that part of it. So just, sorry, two more quick questions. So I'm starting to understand a little bit more about where you're coming from with the wider curb cuts. In my mind, I guess I can still see a scenario where the curb cut width and the turn width can be separated into two different scenarios, right? Because the wider truck definitely needs a wider turning area. It doesn't necessarily need a wider entering area to go straight. So I guess the question there is just trying to get to like sort of data as in like a number, like what specifically is driving the specific request for 20 feet, as in a specific width of a specific vehicle that is expected to circulate the site. I'm just really interested in getting specificity on these large trucks rather than just the general, we know that there are larger trucks that would come and circulate the site. And then the last question I have separate from that is just after hearing about the parking difference between are they one-bedroom units? The one-bedroom units and the live-work units, is code requiring you to build live-work units? Okay. Okay.
And back to your question, what's driving this is more the unit type. It's because we got to this place, a 20-foot drive, maybe it's 18, maybe it's 17, but keeping the building footprint is the variance we're seeking, not the drive width. We want the extra drive because we can have it, but if there's a sweet spot that engineers come back and said, you know, we did a study with all the different vehicles, 17 feet will work.
Right.
So yeah, but not changing the building
Great.
width.
And then you understand, obviously, that the clear sight lines can be achieved with landscaping and things other than just pavement. Okay, so I think we're kind of on the same page
Yeah,
there
and
then.
again, this has to go to the planning commission, so we
Right.
can certainly modify it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I did get in touch with the fire marshal, Dennis Barr, about the turning radius of different emergency vehicles. He wasn't able to find the exact information for like the big rig trucks, but the standard fire code does state that a fire apparatus access road shall be 20 feet wide with a 13-foot 6-inch height clearance. And then the turning radius of an ambulance is 9 feet 10 inches. So he thinks that 12 feet would be too narrow for the big rigs. And then I did just want to clarify with the parking. So this is a mixed-use district, but the code doesn't require every building to be mixed use. So although like live work is very desirable, it is not mandated. So I did just want to clear that up. So they can be 100% just residential. They can be live work. They can be mixed use. The code allows it all. And then so the parking for this unit count, the code requires 22 spaces, and the applicant is providing 23. So that's definitely a benefit to be over by one space. So yeah, I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just on the fire truck apparatus, just through experiences, they're not always required to go behind a building because they might also get caught there and they go off of a hose pull. I'm not a fire marshal, but if they park on the street and have hydrants and hoses that go around it, then what I understand is they're not typically going behind. So maybe we reframe the question to see if it's really required to get behind the building so that when it comes to planning commission, they can understand the aisle width. Because I think what we're getting at is it's preferred to have it narrower, again, for pedestrian interaction. A wider is more to cross, and that might be a factor that has some adjustment ability.
There's one other aspect of that question also, and we do have to discuss economics on occasion. A building that has 100% unfettered access to all four sides will command a lower insurance rate.
lower insurance rate.
You're the chair.
Go ahead.
I've been on this board for over 25 years. I've never seen a variance. So this is kind of taking me backwards. I was like,
I never thought about that.
seriously, I mean, they always want more, you know? So I guess I'm trying to have a better understanding of why it would have to be this way. What less is okay in my mind. So I guess I'm just startled by it, that's all.
Yeah, I think that board members, Eric can probably speak to this as well, but I think one of the reasons for the adoption of this language in the ordinance was to promote more continuity of structure across the pedestrian landscape in a more heavily commercial district. Is this specific section of Livernois as, I guess, commercial as, for example, like downtown? Maybe not, but I think that was the underlying concept behind adoption of the language.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So in answer to your question, the less rather than more scenario. My whole goal when I started this conversation with Mike and my brother regarding this development was the safety aspect. Again, I'm being repetitive, but having been there 21 years, turning onto Livernois and turning it off of Livernois, when there was a left-hand turn lane, it was different. It's definitely, my goal was to create those cars coming in and out of the development from having to be paying attention to traffic from both sides and having somebody next to them and turning into oncoming traffic. Again, because there's no left-hand turn lane, you immediately hit the bike lane and then you immediately hit the parallel parking, and then it's the lane in the direction that you're going. And sometimes if there is a Amazon truck or a UPS truck, and they typically park right next to those cars in the middle of the street, you can't see around. And we've had our cars swiped. My employees' cars have been swiped numerous times. So for me, the turnabout and being able to go in one way and out the other would allow those delivery trucks to also free up the street as well. If there's 18 people that are living and working in this building, you're not going to have deliveries. And everybody orders from Amazon. I'm sure everybody here at the table has ordered from Amazon to their house. So that was my whole intent with the two bi-directional drive or one-direction driveways.
Be no left turn on Livernois?
I don't, we do turn left into the driveway off of Livernois now when we go in.
From the parking lot? No left turn onto Livernois?
That has never come up.
Well, I just thought about that would be a lot safer, especially minus the left turn lane. Because at least if you turn left and you got in the left turn lane, you would have time to merge over to the right.
So coming out, you're saying turn right towards 8 Mile
Yeah,
and then to Fielding or,
They can go to Fielding, exactly.
okay. I don't know, I didn't think about that.
Just,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that would make it safer also.
yeah.
Agreed.
Okay.
Well, there's, I think the other thing too, that business, that he's a little sensitive to the whole fire issue because their job is storing people that have been burned. We've seen a number of instances where something had been done a little better, would not have died or would not get us back. Over all these years, we've worked with numbers of
So the fire truck access, I believe the fire truck is how long? He told you he needed 20 feet, is that correct? On the driveway, 20 foot wide, yeah.
Just the standard fire code for a fire apparatus access road is 20 feet wide, so yeah.
So that aspect, and then the DTE trucks who have backed into my yard with the buckets to work in those easements, if we narrow those down, those trucks aren't going to be able to get back there either. And as I said earlier, trying to access from the residential side is almost impossible because the properties on Livernois all back up to houses with the easement, which is about a 10-foot easement in between the houses and the commercial/residential space. So, any other questions? Thank you.
Still reeling from her saying we're asking for less. I just thought of that. Please, I want less.
Not what I expected. But I learn something new at every single meeting.
Every day I wake up with something new. I love it.
This is a little bit odd.
Yeah, this language is probably 5 years in the ordinance.
I mean, I understand the reasoning and why it's there. Just that somebody coming before us with an application.
Sure, right, but it's, you may see it more at this point. Well, as we deliberate, board members, I'll remind you of the standard for granting a non-use variance under Michigan law and under our zoning ordinance. The standard is whether practical difficulties exist that would stand in the way of carrying out the strict letter of the ordinance. This is a slightly more forgiving standard than the undue hardship requirement for use variances, but under our ordinance in Ferndale, granting a dimensional variance requires the board to find that strict compliance will unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose, that the intent and purpose of the ordinance will be observed and substantial justice will be done, that a lesser variance will not give substantial relief to the owner or be more consistent with substantial justice to other property owners, and that the general requirements of section 24-426 are met. In other words, that the variance will not impair the supply of light and air, will not diminish property values, is compatible with adjacent uses, won't unreasonably increase congestion, won't create a nuisance, that the plight results from special or unique circumstances, and that it's not a hardship created by the applicant. In order for a variance to pass, the applicant needs to get at least 4 affirmative votes from the board. So if you were just developing one of these parcels, would you even be able to have a 20-foot drive?
No.
There wouldn't be enough space, would
No,
there?
you'd have a 12-foot drive, and then you couldn't even have a sidewalk to go to the back of the property unless it cut through the building. So yeah, a single 80-foot parcel would not be able to be developed under the ordinance. Like I said, about 3 parcels, yeah. You know, the more space we get, the more, you know, the percentage increase. Or if it was particularly a corner lot, you could go in and out the side street and achieve the 80% and still have that. This is a kind of unique situation. It's an interior lot. It's only a double lot. And went through the machinations and came up with what we think is a good solution. Asking for less.
Through the chair, I just have a comment. After seeing both plans, in my mind, it doesn't make any sense to put a dead end and disrupt the flow. I think that you keeping people's safety and the reality that everyone's ordering from Amazon, and maybe there's going to be a fire in the back of the building. You never know. I think that seeing the new plans really makes a lot of sense.
I tend to agree that the 2 one-way drives makes more sense than a single drive. I do have concerns that with drives this wide, that you are not going to have people that are just going to use them as one-way. With a 20-foot wide drive. people are going to use them both ways. They're not going to follow signs that say one way that are on the drive.
Is that something that city council is gonna deal with, or city planning commission is gonna deal with? That's
Planning
not really
Commission will deal with this to a certain extent. You know, that's not necessarily something that has to affect the variance discussion. It can affect the variance discussion if people believe that the variance should be lesser so that they would not have a 20-foot drive. That said, it's what they're asking for is less frontage space. We're not necessarily making a decision on how they use that space on either side. That's their reasoning for why they want less frontage space. Planning Commission will deal with the site plan.
Through the chair, the intent behind the ordinance that's driving this conversation prevent big gaps when we're walking down the sidewalk, sort of continuity in overall design. And I too share the concern with the 20-foot gap. It feels like that's a big gap to introduce on two sides of a building, and it does break things up a little bit. But you've made a really compelling argument concerning our fire trucks, our ambulances, and deliveries. And I myself, as somebody that lives along Livernois, I've seen firsthand how the delivery trucks block traffic or stop in traffic, and everything can just come to a grinding halt, and you can have a real situation within the street and the traffic there. So I love the idea of a circle drive. It makes a ton of sense. I just have reservations that this doesn't fit the reason that we had this ordinance in the first place, because of the size of the gap, the 20-foot drives on both sides, and the fact that that could potentially create a situation where people are confused as to which side is the right side to go in, which side is the right side to come out, and then you have two people trying to get in and out at the same time. Overall, I like it, though. Good job.
I think with working with the engineering department, or striping,
What I was gonna say.
Yeah.
striping down either side, because there's, if you look at what's been done on the road with the stripes, I think it's real clear. And I've seen people park. They park right, there's that little 3-foot gap for the door opening in front of the bicycle. They're lined up. People follow those lines, and I think we could work with that and come up with a solution, and really with good signage and with painting on the street. I mean, you look at what's happening all around now with bike lanes and crosswalks, and I think people are starting to really get the message, pay attention to those. I think you're right, but we could easily stripe down a 3-foot on each side and narrow it up to 14 feet. Because then the space is there for them to use, but visually it says, wait, I'm only this wide.
That's clever.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Through the chair, I guess the concern or the struggle I'm having with here when thinking about, I guess, the applicant's stated practical difficulty, which is general safety, I guess, is that I still don't feel that that's fleshed out in the plan and the data we've been presented with. When you talk about it's for safety, but then striping off some of the drive, it's like, still sounds like we're building a drive that's way wider than it actually needs to be at the front there. So, and then, by your own admission, I get it. I understand economic concerns. You've stated that that's so I'm fully on board with the circle drive. Having a circle drive on this site clearly to me is the safer option versus a dead end versus a two-way that ends in a dead end. Where I stop short of understanding how I can support a variance for practical difficulty is it's really not fleshed out in the plans here and in the actual need for the curb cut to be a certain width. What's been stated is that the actual need of the applicant is to not build the building bigger than a certain size for economic reasons, but we're not here to consider that part of it. So in giving a variance, then we need to make sure that it's the least variance we can give. So then I'm solely focusing on the safety concern, but I'm still not understanding why it can't be a bit smaller than what's being presented.
If the fire, you said the fire wants 20 feet, right? That's something that.
Can you read what the fire marshal said again? Because I didn't hear a requirement for 20 feet in there.
It says the fire code does state a fire apparatus access road shall be 20 feet wide with a 13-foot, 6-inch height clearance. And then he didn't have the information for the big rig turn radius, but he had the information for the radius of the ambulance. And in his professional opinion, he believes that the 12-foot, wide drive would be too narrow. And I do want to bring up that Planning Commission and planning staff can work with the applicant on the width of the driveway, and that here we are kind of only solely focusing on the percentage variance. So I don't want to get too hung up on the driveway, because that's totally something like Planning Commission can deal with at a later time. But this is just the building.
I guess then maybe it's more of a general process concern or question for you then, I guess, about how the city decides when and which board the plans are going to, because I feel like I've seen it both ways here, where we've gotten a site plan maybe after the planning commission versus here we're seeing it before the planning commission. And I always, when it's early in the site design, I always struggle with the least variance required to get what I'm saying, because when the site isn't fully fleshed out and you don't have all the data, to me, to give this variance that's requested tonight feels like giving the most to make sure that they can then whittle it down to what they actually need. That's giving more of a variance. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the applicant had submitted some different plans throughout the summer. It looks like the first plan was submitted actually in December 2022. So this is something that planning staff has been discussing for quite some time now. And we have gone through multiple revisions. I'd say we were pretty close to being ready for Planning Commission when we noticed this discrepancy here. So we decided to go for the Board of Zoning Appeals first, just because we knew that the Planning Commission wouldn't be able to approve it if it didn't fit the ordinance. So we just decided to try this first. Is that a pretty accurate representation? So yeah, so there's always like the chicken and the egg, like what comes first. And I think other projects, maybe it would make more sense to do Planning Commission first and Board of Zoning Appeals later, but we just felt like this was the correct course of action with this particular project.
I guess my follow-up comment would be that our zoning code doesn't require a 20-foot wide drive for a one-way. There are no engineering controls shown on site here to guarantee that this is going to be a safer condition than having the slimmer drives. There's a lot of safety concerns, honestly, that I have about how it is presented. So I'm still seeing a site plan that I can't say which is the more safe option. I have concerns. I guess it would be helpful if the fire marshal had been able to come tonight and speak, or was a little more clear when he said 20 foot is standard, 12 feet won't work. He didn't say, in my professional opinion, he didn't say anything else like what's the minimum that could be there. Our code, I don't hear you saying that our code actually requires 20 feet. Otherwise, then we would just be saying that every single site like this that gets built from here on out is gonna have 20-foot wide one-way drives? Or like,
Yeah, so there is a discrepancy between the fire code, and I don't know too much about the fire code, but it sounds like there is a discrepancy between the 20-foot wide fire code and then our zoning ordinance. And this is a fairly new zoning ordinance, this page, so I think it was adopted in 2018 or 2019. And this is, you know, a pretty unique case, pretty unique property, but so if there are discrepancies that we're discovering, it's good timing that we're discovering it because we are going through our zoning ordinance rewrite. So this is something that we've been looking at possibly changing or updating both driveway width and then the primary frontage 80% requirement as well. So, you know, we're learning along the way as we go through projects too. So definitely something that we can get more clarification from the fire marshal about and look through our code and see if this is something that we want to change going forward.
yeah, I appreciate that, and I guess because just my final comment on that would be that if it's correct to say that going forward, every one-way drive we built on a, you know, multifamily development in the city has to be 20 feet wide, I would have major concerns with that, because it is common to build, cities all around us are building one-way drives that are 10 feet now, and this tension between creating a walkable urban environment with dense mixed uses together and multiple modes of transportation versus the ever-growing widths of cars and trucks and the frequency of deliveries, like that is not going away. And
Definitely.
I don't think that we as a city need to be ceding our desires for an urban, you know, a safe, walkable environment to, you know, the Amazons of the world. So I guess I just get really concerned about making sure that when we do give a variance for something like this, that it really is like, what is the least practicable, needed amount to really serve that use and serve that property. I like the project. I live in the neighborhood. I would be happy if they built that there. I don't want them to build a dead end there, but I still don't feel like I understand truly why they can't build the 16-foot wide one-way curb cuts at least, even if.
In the building?
Yeah, and widen the building.
It would have to be more conforming to what.
I don't feel that that argument has been made convincingly, in my opinion.
But we're trying to go with the variance, so if they narrow the driveway, then the building, so that it would be more conforming to what is allowed. They would need a lesser variance.
I guess that's why I'm saying, like, I don't see where I can know what the least variance that they would really require to build the one-way drive is tonight.
Through the chair, if I may, I think we're confusing two things. One is the driveway width, which really, it can be more, it can be less. So, and I definitely know that Planning Commission would look for more asks on that, either permeable, more green space. They definitely would look at the widths. So I believe that that would be a really strong discussion on safety and how that drive is planned. What I'm coming back to is the building size. The building size isn't driven by the drives. The building size is driven by what I'm understanding is the size of the site, and I want to go back to that. So if you have a bigger building, you may have more units and you would need more parking, and I believe parking is mostly maxed out on here. So it's the size of the site and the parking required for the size of the building relative that is helping to make this building less than 80% of the width, if that makes sense. Again, I'm pushing the drive talk out of this purview. I know we all want it to be safe, but I'm confident that would be addressed, very well addressed. And we can also put in minutes, or I can take it to our meeting. We have a meeting tomorrow and express the concern about wide widths of driveways in a situation like this It's in a neighborhood where very highly pedestrian and bike, and does also have vehicles coming in. So that's the filter that I'm putting it through is, does the building and the parking support each other, and could you get the building any bigger and have the parking supported no matter the drive width? And the reason I'm pushing back a little bit on the drive width, again, knowing that the planning commission can look at it, going back to the fire code, and I'm not an expert, so let's ask, a fire apparatus road is actually not typically on private property, so the Livernois might be considered a fire apparatus road, but if they needed to pull into here, if they pulled straight in, not circling around, if they pulled in, what would be the minimum there? If they pulled in, straight in, stayed on the side, is 12 enough, just throwing a number out there, to fight a fire front, back, side, and back out. So if we could ask, is the real intent to need to pull all the way around the building? Or could they service it with the right width off of Livernois? Or if they were to pull in and service it and back out, would that be sufficient? So that we're not saying we are fixed to have a 20-foot drive for fire trucks. And I think that kind of answers the, will this happen on every property where we need this big road? So that clarification might help just looking at that lens.
Yeah, I'll definitely get some more comments from the fire marshal, and regarding like being able to access the building behind. It kind of goes back to like the Amazon and the delivery and the Ubers and everything. Like, yeah, people can get picked up and they can have packages dropped off on Livernois, but is that going to cause traffic and safety and pedestrian and bicyclist issues in its own from that? So I'm not sure. So yeah.
If I may, just on that point, one thing we're definitely going to grill them about is garbage. So like sometimes you don't think about can the garbage truck get back there, back up, rotate, is it safe? So there's a lot of checks and balances for big maneuvering on site, and we want that to be safe too. So I think we'll cover all those bases. I just want to make sure we're careful on what criteria we're setting for the width of that when we're really looking at the building size, and can the site support that. And a bigger building needs more parking, which means you couldn't really build it here because you're not able to support it with parking unless there's other ways to get additional parking somewhere. So,
Well, that was awesome. I appreciate every bit of that. That's so good. But then I guess then the only other thing is it's not, the parking is limiting the units, okay? They can still build a bigger building with bigger units with the same number of units. And I still don't know. I still feel like I'm just guessing at what, other than the economic factors that are driving this size of building and this unit size, which again, we're not really supposed to consider here. I don't know actually how big they need the building to be.
Through the chair, I think that's fair because if they came in with a much larger building and not meeting the required parking, they may be asked to provide parking, shared parking or find other parking nearby or create an agreement for that. So that's true. This is a lesser variance. If they came in for a larger or something that met the variance but they couldn't meet the parking, they might be asked to try and provide that parking somewhere else. So it's sort of the case that with the number of units they have now, the parking is fine, but if they wanted more, they'd still be asked to find it. So
If they wanted more units,
Right.
but they're not, the building can be bigger because the units can be bigger. That's all I was saying.
understood, yeah.
So the 26 feet that they're asking for a variance on, if it was 26 feet, it would be 13 feet on each side. Making this up. Make it easy. 13 feet on each side would only allow a 7-foot driveway. So that doesn't make sense to me. not gonna allow them to build a larger building without having enough room for the one-way drives to be, at least, I know, a one-car garage is 15 feet.
Well, that's the variance though, which is on top of what they're already allowed,
They
the
are
20.
looking at the bid.
No, I know. It's 26 feet of variance, which is on top of the 20% that they have by right. So it's not 13 feet on each side, because when I asked the question, would you need a variance if you had 16 feet on each side, they would not need a variance for 16 feet. So I don't have any data here telling me between the 26 feet and the 16 feet, what's the minimum necessary to give the variance. That's what I'm saying.
I think reducing the drives by 4 feet, though, to 16 feet for each drive, and then retaining the sidewalk and the landscaping, that's not going to take you down to only 16 feet on each side of the building. If they were to go down to, if they were to try to be in complete compliance, I think the applicant's statement was that the drives would be narrow, there would be no sidewalk, it would be just a drive along the side of the building. And if you needed to walk back around to the parking lot and not through a unit, you'd be walking in the drive. Which is not a situation I'm entirely comfortable with. I can understand the request for the variance here. What I struggle with is, do we need to have 40 feet of driveway opening on each side of this building? Could the building be constructed such that a lesser variance was required that would maybe allow for a reduction in the size of the variance? That's one of the things that we've got to consider here. Would a lesser variance give substantial relief to the owner? Do they need to have the full 20 feet of driveway? We've got to consider that.
And that's my main question. That's all I was trying to say, really. Thank you, Ian.
Any further discussion from board members at this point? And the applicant, if you had something else that you'd like to
Yes, please.
to add, certainly.
All great points, especially the garbage truck. I didn't even think about that. It completely passed, my mind. But I'm going to make it a point to reach out to Dennis. I know Dennis. I'm going to reach out to DTE and see what they require for their bucket trucks to access the back, as well as the garbage trucks. I think the situation here is unique. Again, having been there 21 years, due to the design and where the power poles are located on this property. Hence, that was the purpose of the request for the 20-foot wide driveways for those vehicles. How long have you lived in the area, if you don't mind me asking?
Since 2015.
2015. In that 8 years, how often has your power gone out?
Never, actually.
Really? Yeah. Are you near Livernois?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then you're lucky. So.
Yeah. No, we are. I recognize that we are lucky,
Yeah.
because my neighbor's power actually goes out all the time.
Other side of the street, right?
No, next door to me, we let them plug in with the extension. Yeah, we're just
It's
lucky.
the other side of the street.
So
Yeah.
I've lived that pain. Like I said, for 21 years, we put a generator on our building because of the nature of what we do. We do emergency services for the insurance companies and for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And not having power, not being able to field calls from homeowners who've had fires or floods or tree damage on their homes, we would be out of business. So that design is it's not great. And that was my whole concept in doing that. But I'm more than happy to get that statistical data from Dennis, from DTE, and see what's required in order for us to be able to provide access to make sure that everybody that's living, working there, including the houses behind, are safer. That was my goal. So I'll do that, and I'll get that back to Christine, and we'll take it from there.
One thing I want to raise too, which I do anytime we have a BZA meeting where we don't have a full set of board members present. I always offer up to any applicants, if you'd like to table and come back the following month and perhaps have an additional person or two here to hear your arguments, you're always welcome to do that. Just because of the nature of boards and commissions being volunteer positions, sometimes we have everybody here. Tonight we don't. We're missing one of our members. We didn't realize he wasn't going to be here. So if you'd like to come back again and look for an opportunity to have a vote when you have a full set of board members here, just let us know, and you're welcome to do that.
I think I'm comfortable. I've heard all valid points tonight from everybody, and everybody's questions and points were well made, so leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry. I'd like to add some comments and maybe suggest or request a direction here. My name is Hassan Joad. I'm with FLX Construction as well. It was stated that typically this goes before Planning Commission before it makes its way to you guys. And I don't think there's any concerns or issues relative to the variance being granted for the frontage. It's just a matter of how much of the variance dependent upon the width of the driveways, which I think is the point of concern here. And it probably needs to be vetted out a little bit more with police and fire and so forth. What I was going to request is that, as opposed to putting it to a vote tonight, is that we do table it and maybe we can get on as a discussion item with planning. And that way, when it makes its way back to the BZA, you have a recommendation or we have a direction from planning in regards to what they feel they will support in regards to driveway width. So
I think that's a good idea, because as you've heard, there's, you got different ideas up here about what that width should be. I think several of us feel that 20 feet is too wide. You have some other opinions, some outside opinions that think maybe 20 feet makes sense. From our perspective, are these constituencies that we have to take into consideration?
Right.
Do we allow DTE to override what our city council has adopted as our zoning ordinance? Well, that's not really something that we're supposed to be doing as BZA members, despite the fact that they may be very valid concerns on DTE's behalf. I think if Planning Commission takes a look at this plan and has a discussion about how the driveways need to be, with the understanding that I think there's some willingness on BZA to grant a variance here, the issue really is how much does that variance need to be in order to be the essentially least variance that is required for substantial justice. Because as you all know, once we grant a variance in a situation like this, we're essentially saying that anyone else that's in a landlocked parcel all up and down Livernois that wants to have the exact same driveway, we're not going to be able to say no to them. So we've got to be a little bit more cautious. Having more data and backup for a record as to what the practical difficulty is in any given situation is always more helpful to us. The more data we have to back up a practical difficulty on a specific parcel, the easier it is for us to actually grant a variance. So if you could come back, if you want to table it and then come back with some more, with the understanding that we are very willing to entertain the request, I think we're certainly open to that.
yeah, I think I agree with you, and I think that's the best route at this point, because as I said, nobody seems to be concerned with the smaller frontage. Nobody seems to be concerned, and everybody seems to be on the same page with the one-way driveways going in and out.
Certainly.
We talked about a no left turn scenario. We talked about some additional striping, obviously a do not enter sign coming in on one side, adequate signage to differentiate between the entrance and the exit as well. And those are all things that we intend to incorporate into the plan regardless. But it ultimately comes down to, as you said, deciding what that optimal driveway width is going to be to grant the minimal variance as opposed to the maximum variance
Right.
possible.
In other words, help us help you.
Yes.
Come back with what we need.
Yes, so that's, if it's okay with the board, we'd like to table it, and if we can we'll work through planning to maybe get on as a discussion item with the Planning Commission, get their feedback, get their recommendations, talk to the various departments regarding emergency vehicles, and then you'll have the blanks filled the next time we come back before you.
I appreciate that, and I want to thank you all for the time and for the cogent presentation. You brought some good information into us. I think, as you've seen, we're all on board with the design in theory. We all think this makes much more sense than having our one driveway. So let's see what we can do to get the data together to make it happen.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so we will table that item. We do not need a motion to do that. Table that until we have the applicant back before the board, and we'll move on to our next item, which is administrative items. So, members of the board, any administrative items that anyone has for us?
Oh, we need to find another.
Yep, we do. I think the city is already working to identify someone. I had some communications with Kyle to confirm that, yes, Austin is no longer going to be with us. So we're actually looking for both a regular member and also an alternate member at this point. We're short regular members and alternates. And we probably should determine who our alternates are and what we're doing to kind of get them in the loop if we know that members are going to be absent. Although I guess tonight with Nicholas not giving any advance notice, I don't know that we will alternate here in time. So I'll reach out to Nick and see what happened with tonight and just remind him if he's not going to be able to make it, that's fine, but please let us know so we can.
I think we've always had, or we try to have two alternates, yeah. We need a member and then an alternate, or two alternates.
All right. Other issues that we have going on for administrative items, we do still have, of course, the review of the zoning ordinance and the rewrite of the zoning ordinance that's going on. There are a couple of more events that are going to be happening in this regard. Unfortunately, one of them is tonight. That's why we don't have Kyle with us today. He's over at the high school for the equity session for the zoning and equity. They're having that discussion tonight. Christine, can you remind me what other events we have for the zoning rewrite?
Yeah, so tonight was the third of our 4 scheduled events. Next Saturday, the 26th, or is that 2 Saturdays from now? The 26th from 12 to 3 at Wilson Park, that will be our sustainability zoning workshop. So I don't know too much of the specifics yet, we're still working it out. But I'm sure we'll have some poster boards, some sticky notes, and opportunities for public comment and suggestions, questions, concerns. And yeah, we'll be at Wilson Park all afternoon. So.
Great. I'll try to make that one.
He's got a really far way to go. Like out his gate, he's there.
Oh, literally
I know
saying.
it's just right on Wilson
Yeah,
Park.
I could like look out my window through my binoculars and I could see it.
You said 12 to 3?
Yep, 12 to 3, Saturday, August 26th.
And through the chair, what do you know about, like, what is the time frame when they might be publishing a sort of first draft, I guess, for?
Yeah, that is a great question. So we have a project website called Zone Ferndale. And it's a really great website. It has links to our master plan, our current zoning ordinance, and it lists out all of our goals and objectives. And it has this great participate button. There's a timeline on here somewhere. So we are looking to have a draft for Planning Commission and City Council, like late fall, early winter. So November to December. And then we're hoping to have the new zoning ordinance adopted early 2024. I think the time frame for that is probably around February or March. So, but yeah, we're just in the engagement phase right now, trying to get as much feedback as possible, and then we will begin drafting. So we have steering committee meetings. Tomorrow, we're having a zoning workshop at the planning commission meeting, so that'll be here in this room at 6:30. Anyone is welcome to join and share their thoughts. And then we'll be doing some more meetings with various boards and commissions, city council, everyone, so.
Christine, could we get a link on the city's website that is a visible and prominent link to the Zone Ferndale website?
Yeah, I think that's something that we've been working on, yeah, so.
I have had multiple residents complain to me
Okay.
about the fact, as in any municipality, there are going to be a number of people who are going to want to know what's going on, maybe not going to be as technologically proficient, and they're not going to spend as much time looking for it without assuming that something's not there or something's being hidden from them.
Okay, yeah,
So we have been trying, both at Planning Commission and Zoning Board, I think the city in general has been really trying over the last 5 to 10 years to really step it up with what we're doing to communicate information to residents, because we do have more and more residents that are interested in what's going on as we've had more development over the last 5 or 6 years, and are wanting to know more about it, but maybe not as practiced in navigating the available information resources. So we want to make these as easy to find as possible. Someone had asked me a couple days ago, where can I find the information about the zoning rewrite online? I had forgotten the actual name of the website, so I'm thinking, I said, it's right on the city's website. I went and looked, and of course, it's not there.
yeah,
So that engenders suspicion in certain members of the
course,
populace. And then
yeah.
for other members of the community, they just want to know what's happening and they can't find it.
yeah, and we do have a very new website too, so we've been working through a lot of the kinks with that, so I can reach out to the communications department again and see if we can get the ball rolling with that, because yeah, I agree, it's great to have more access to information, so.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I myself was looking for it on the city website, and it'd be great to have it on the homepage and kind of those, you scroll down and there's alerts and stuff, but I was looking for it under the current development projects, which I know is more about the big site plan projects, but it does have, it did have Woodward moves there, and in the past, sometimes they have put the projects there. So I don't know if that'd be helpful to other people. I was kind of looking for it there, if it's not hard to add a button or something.
Yeah, I'd say
Okay,
multiple
yeah.
different
Just
links in
A
different
few places, yeah.
As long as it's a thing that's ongoing, that we're trying to gather feedback from the public right now, the more ways we can make it easy for people to get feedback, the better, I think.
Yeah, sure.
And also, can you, we have that initial analysis that was done by our consultants. Could you circulate that to the members of the BZA?
Yes, of course.
That'd be great.
Yep, so that is the zoning diagnostic report, and that was done by McKenna, our consulting firm. I believe it is on this website too, but I will definitely go ahead and send you all an email as well. So, yeah, the zoning diagnostic report right here. Yeah, this is a really great resource. We've been coming back to this a lot for our discussions, and I'm sure our zoning workshop tomorrow at Planning Commission will pretty heavily reference this as well. So, yeah, lots of great stuff.
Yeah, this request today actually is probably another thing that can be added to the list when we have this increased frontage requirement. How far do we want that to stretch from the downtown district? Do we need that 80% to stretch all the way up and down Livernois? How does that work with the existing Livernois? Is that something that is on Hilton right now too? It probably is. If it's on
Yeah, it's all the mixed-use districts.
Mixed-use districts.
Yeah.
I believe industrial districts, and then CBD and C2, I believe. So everything except residential and C3, I believe, so.
We should probably consider whether we need to have a slightly different requirement for the CBD as opposed to mixed use that is outside of the CBD.
Yeah, it's good timing to have all these requests come to the BZA, because it's really good when it's fresh in our minds like this, so.
All right, any other board items that anyone has, or administrative items? I can't even remember which one we're on. Administrative board. think we passed administrative and went to board items. All right, in that case, with no other items, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So do.
Moved by Palmer,
Second.
support. That motion carries. I'm not even going to take a vote, and we're going to adjourn at, what, 8:29 PM. All right, good meeting tonight, everyone.
Yes.